everything works. Especially that thing. Check it out.
This morning computer gave the problem.
Huh?
Now computer is giving little problem.
The computer's giving a problem.
This morning is getting stuck.
Getting stuck.
This morning I noticed.
You're okay now.
Yeah, so it's all good.
You're going to take it to the doctor, or you're going to kick it out of the house? Huh?
I think we need a dedicated computer.
That's what we need, dedicated computers. Not these whimsical ones. Come and go, uninitiated computers. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Ballabha Girivardhari Girivardhari Gopijana Ballabha Girivardhari Jasodhanandana Brajajanarandana Jasodhanandana Brajajanarandana Jamana Tira Lanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Ballabha Girivardhari Gopijana Ballabha Girivardhari Jasodhanandana Brajajanarandana Jasodhanandana Brajajanarandana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Hari Vidivacharya Astatarasatasi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Gaur Premanandi. This evening we're going to be discussing 3 verses from Canto 10, Chapter 12, the Krishna's encounter with Aghasura, and what happens. Krishna's encounter with Aghasura. And what happens. Just going back a little bit. Krishna's encounter with Aghasura. To get the context. And what happens. Just going back a little bit. Krishna's encounter with Aghasura. Chapter 12 begins. Another day in the life of what happens. Just going back a little bit. Krishna's encounter with Aghasura. Chapter 4 and 5 years old. They're herding calves. Another day in the life of what happens. And they go off in the morning. Chapter 4 and 5 years old. Without their calves. Another day in the life of what happens. And they go off in the morning. Chapter 4 and 5 years old. Without their calves. Another day in the life of what happens. And they go off in the morning. Series of verses just describing series of verses just describing different names for different friends of Krishna and the subtypes of this and that and the other describing different names for different and Krishna. Then a very important verse that had the 50 verse commentary on they see how much the source of impersonal happiness from the soul. The devotees, Dasya Bhaktas, they see him as their worshipable Lord. The materialists, they just see him as an ordinary person. The yogis, absorbed after many, many lifetimes, fixing their mind upon the personality of God, cannot even touch a particle of dust from the feet of the personality of Godhead. The cowherd boys are playing with him all the time. And all the residents of Vrindavan, they're also in a constant association. So it's how special are these devotees? So lots of commentary on how special are the Brijbasis in particular, because the topic is about the cowherd boys. The cowherd boys. Section ends. So they're in this super frolicsome, playful mood, looking for the next adventure, and the next adventure shows up. Specifically, the verse says that by the arrangements of Yogamaya, is now times for encountering a demon. So Aghasura came and describes his features, and the cowherd boys were speculating. Maybe this, maybe that. Maybe it's just like a big statue out here and arranged by Krishna for us to play with. Maybe this, maybe that, and they kind of, some boys ran away. Maybe it's a real serpent, and said no. Even if it is, you know what Krishna did with Baka, and you know what Krishna did with this one, that one. So there's nothing to worry about. We're really curious. Let's go inside and see what it is. And we'd really be happy to see Krishna's display of his mystic powers. As he says, let's go. With their arms raised and clapping and shouting, marched into the mouth of Aghasura. And the calves, following the cowherd boys, they, with their tails raised, they just went right behind him. And from the beginning of the chapter, that's a lot of calves and a lot of cowherd boys. Something like 10 million cowherd boys. And more than you can count calves. Asankhataha. It's a big number. It gives more than this and this and this and this and this. So it's a lot of calves. It was a big serpent, 8 miles long. And he waited. The serpent didn't close his mouth on the boys because he wanted Krishna to come. Then comes another celebrated verse where 3 things. Krishna's marveling at his Leela Shakti, what arrangements Leela Shakti has just made. Krishna's Satya Sankalpa Shakti is thwarted, it looks like, because he didn't want them to enter, and they entered. So it's like his own potency was blocked by something, because they entered, and he didn't want it. And then the next thing is he became bewildered. He was amazed at his own Leela Shakti. His own Satya Sankalpa potency seemed to have been blocked, and he became bewildered what to do. He who is omniscient became bewildered what to do. Which means he enjoys. It didn't last long. So his contemplation specifically was how to kill Aghasura and how to protect the boys and the calves without harming the boys and the calves, to kill Aghasura. And then he knew what to do, and so he did what he did. He entered the body of Aghasura, who tried to close his jaw, but Krishna became really, really big. Aghasura's body expanded. It expanded to the point where he suffocated. His life air couldn't go anywhere. And then, so here's the text that we started yesterday, didn't finish. From the body of the gigantic python, a glaring effulgence came out, illuminating all directions, and stayed individually in the sky until Krishna came out from the corpse's mouth. Then, as all the demigods looked down, the effulgence entered into Krishna's body. And the last commentary we read explains, this is text 33, Vishwanath writes, according to verses 38, 39, Aghasura attained a form like the Lord's and attained the Lord's abode. From this it is clear that Aghasura did not attain merely Sayuja Mukti, but Sarupya Mukti. Sounds like also Salokya. Therefore, the light which was visible was the light from Aghasura's spiritual body, which he attained at that moment. Because the body itself was spiritual, it could not be seen with material eyes. His entrance into the Lord's body was just a show, as in the case of Shishupal and Dantavakra. Though Shishupal and Dantavakra attained their Sarupya as eternal associates of the Lord, when they died, a light from their bodies entered into the Lord. So now, continuing. So this is 33, 34, 35. Jiva Goswami writes, the light was indescribable, adbhutam, because it was so bright. The Devatas looked on. The soul of Agha was waiting only for Krishna. The Devatas looked on in astonishment, since a sinner was liberated and because they could observe the process of liberation, which is beyond material perception. This was arranged by the Lord so that Brahma and the others would have no doubt, and to astonish them. That's a secondary rasa. Since the jiva has no form and is therefore not visible, it became a form, possessing light by investment of the power of the Lord. Sanatana Goswami says a number of the same things, almost identical, and then adds, the light entering Krishna is only in appearance. Actually, one merges in Brahman. This liberation, which amounts to non-existence, is not the final goal. Because it is contrary to bhakti rasa, it is rejected by the devotees. It is proper that demons attain this goal. That is the Vaishnava conclusion. It is explained in Bhagavatamrita. That's Sanatana Goswami making reference to Brihat Bhagavatamrita, so I'm going to refer to Brihat Bhagavatamrita where he writes about it. 2.118, the commentary. This is Gopi's rendering of Sanatana Goswami's commentary. The perfection of Sayuja, or merging into the existence of the Lord, is prized by the impersonalists, but is not found in Vaikuntha. Rather than a devotional perfection, Sayuja is a form of impersonal liberation. Even demons who hate the personality of Godhead are sometimes given Sayuja as a reward for constantly meditating on the Lord as an enemy. But anyone who has tasted devotional service to the Supreme Lord rejects Sayuja. And a chapter later, 2.2, text 2.10, he makes reference to the 7th canto, Bhagavatam 1.27. 7.1.27. This is set this first chapter of Canto 7 is a discussion between Narada and Yudhisthira in the presence of Krishna and the rest of the Pandavas and other assembled persons. After the Rajasuya Yagya, they saw Shishupal merge in the body of Krishna, so Yudhisthira asks Narada, how does this happen? Liberation is so rare to achieve, and this bad person achieved it. How did that happen? And Narada proceeds to explain how it happened, and this is text 27. By devotional service, it seems, this is Sanatana Goswami describing, in the 7th canto 7.1.27, Narada even seems to glorify hatred of the Lord. Quote, by devotional service, one cannot achieve such intense absorption in the thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as one can through enmity toward Him. That is my opinion. So, Sanatana Goswami writes, one explanation of Narada's peculiar praise of hatred towards the Supreme Lord is that he is subtly ridiculing the impersonal liberation of Sayuja, or merging into the existence of the Supreme. What he is actually saying then is that by being inimical to the Lord, one achieves only the worthless state of becoming one with the Lord. Tan mayata. So that's Sanatana Goswami's commentary. And Jiva Goswami writes, the Jiva manifested as a light which could be seen in order to show the Lord's power. So that's 33, here's 34. Translation. Remember, this is Prabhupada's translation and purport. Thereafter, everyone being pleased, the demigods began to shower flowers from Nandana Kanana. What's Nandana Kanana?
Indra's garden.
Indra's garden. Sometimes, yeah, it's heavenly garden. It's not his name. His garden has a slightly different name, which I couldn't find. But anyway, a celestial garden, maybe Indra's garden. So they have nice flowers there. So the demigods picked flowers from there and showered them down. The celestial dancing girls began to dance, and the Gandharvas, who were famous for singing, offered songs of prayer. The drummers began to beat their kettle drums, and the Brahmanas offered Vedic hymns. In this way, both in the heavens and on earth, everyone began to perform his duties, glorifying the Lord. Purport, Prabhupada. Everyone has some particular duty. The Shastra has concluded, nirupitaha, that everyone should glorify the Supreme Personality Godhead by his own qualifications. If you're a singer, always glorify the Supreme Lord by singing very nicely. If you're a musician, glorify the Supreme Lord by playing musical instruments. Svanustatasya dharmasya samsiddhir haritoshanam. 1-13 Bhagavatam. The perfection of life is to satisfy the Personality Godhead. Therefore, beginning from this earth, where do we go? Beginning from this earth up to the celestial kingdom, everyone engaged in glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The decision of all great saintly persons is that whatever qualifications one has acquired should be utilized to glorify the Supreme Lord. And then he quotes Bhagavatam 1:5-22. Idam hi pungsas tapasak shrutasya va svistasya suktasya chabodhi dattayoho avinshutorta kavibhir nirupito yad uttama shloka gunanuvarnanam. Nice verse. Learned sages have definitely concluded that the infallible purpose of the advancement of knowledge, austerity, Vedic study, sacrifice, chanting of hymns, and charity is found in the transcendental descriptions of the qualities of the Lord, who is defined in choice poetry. This is the perfection of life. One should be trained how to glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead by one's respective qualities, education, austerity, penance, or, in the modern world, business, industry, education, and so on. All should be engaged in glorifying the Lord. Then everyone in the world will be happy. Paragraph. Krishna comes, therefore, to exhibit his transcendental activities so that people may have the chance to glorify him in every respect. To understand how to glorify the Lord is actual research work. It is not that everyone should be understood. It is not that everything should be understood without God. That is condemned. Quoting Hari Bhakti Sudodaya, Bhagavat Bhaktihi Nasya Jati Shastram Japastapaha Apranasyaiva Dehasya Maddanam Loka Rasjanam. Without Bhagavat Bhakti, without glorification of the Supreme Lord, whatever we have is simply a decoration of the dead body. Vishwanath Chakravarti's commentary. These are all very short. The Devas performed the worship, Arhanam, of Krishna, he who created himself, Svakritaha. Sugha, meaning those who sing beautifully, refers to the Gandharvas. Vadyadhara means the Vidyadharas. Vipras means Vishishta and others. Gana means Garuda and others. Jiva Goswami writes, after Krishna emerged from the snake, they rejoiced. Sanatana Goswami writes, after Krishna emerged from the snake, Tataha, they rejoiced because the demon was killed and he attained liberation. By rejoicing, they appeared to be splendid. Sura means those who give splendor. This means even the flowers were splendid. Suga means that the songs were splendid. The stavas were splendid by their nature because they could not accomplish their task by praising properly. Gana refers to the associates of the Lord, or to the cowherd boys. Thus the sound of Jai that they uttered were also splendid. And the final verse, when Lord Brahma heard the wonderful ceremony going on near his planet, accompanied by music and songs and sounds of Jaya, Jaya, he immediately came down to see the function. Upon seeing so much glorification of Lord Krishna, he was completely astonished. And Prabhupada's purport reads, here the word anti, A-N-T-I, means, quote, near, indicating that even in the higher planetary systems near Brahmaloka, like Maharloka, Janaloka, and Tapaloka, the festive glorification of Lord Krishna was going on. It was a big deal. Aghasura is finished and liberated. Vishwanath Chakravarti writes, there was the sound of wonderful stutis, beautiful instrumental music, soft singing, shouts of Jai, Jai, combining to make not one festival, but an infinity of festivals. From Maharloka to Janaloka, from Janaloka to Tapaloka, the inhabitants were listening and then singing. From Tapaloka next to Brahmaloka, Swadhamna Anti, or next to Brahmaloka, Brahma heard the singing. While the light Aghasura was going to Vaikuntha at that time to see the glory of Krishna, Ishashyamahi, Brahma came to Vrindavan, unseen by others, and was astonished. Or it can mean coming to Vrindavan and seeing Krishna's glory, he was astonished. Jiva Goswami writes, it's short, hearing the remarkable glorification, Brahma quickly came from his abode close to Krishna, and seeing the glory, Mahi, of Krishna in giving liberation to the demon, seeing what he had not seen anywhere else, he was amazed. And Sanatana Goswami writes, Adi indicates the Apsara's ankle bells sounding and clapping of hands. Mangala Svanam refers to words like Namo Namaha. Brahma saw the greatness, Mahi, of Krishna. What's that? Giving liberation, various pastimes in Vrindavan, his clothing and his beauty. The stotras were astonishing. All the items, such as music and singing, were astonishing. There was great rejoicing. Nai kot svasva. The auspicious sounds were full of rejoicing. He, that's Brahma, saw the Lord who appeared on earth to protect it and spread his unlimited glories. Vishwanath writes, and this is the last section, No one but an infinity of festivals was produced by the wonderful prayers, melodious instrumental music, soft celestial songs, and shouts of Jai Jai. Even in the higher planetary systems like Janaloka, Maharloka, and Tapaloka, the festival of glorification of Krishna was going on. Brahma heard the singing. While the light of Aghasura's soul was passing to Vaikuntha, Brahma, or Aja, became astonished at Krishna's glories. He came invisibly to Vrindavan, or it can mean coming to Vrindavan and seeing Krishna's glory. Brahma was astonished. And it is pretty astonishing in multiple ways. I mean, one of them is at least Putana came with some intention to do some service. What was Aghasura's service? Still, Krishna gave him liberation, and not only gave him Sayuja. I'll read from some other references. Krishna is very kind. So, Madhvacharya makes a comment, writes a comment. He writes a whole verse, and the verse says, Pondraka, Narakasura, Shalva, and Kamsa were all inimical toward the Supreme Personality Godhead, but because all these kings constantly thought of him, they achieved the same liberation, Sarupya, Mukti. The Jnana Bhakta, the devotee who follows the path of Jnana, also attains the same destination. So we don't put that information together and come to the conclusion, okay, just become inimical, fix your mind upon Krishna in an inimical way. Because look, Narada said, you can't fix your mind any better than that. It does tell us the importance of where the mind goes. Where the mind goes while we're chanting. Where the mind goes when we're cooking or doing your office work or whatever. Where the mind goes is important. Because where the mind goes is where you go. Now there's practices of bhakti. Sadhana bhakti. But the purposes of the sadhana bhakti, what does Rupa Goswami say? The purposes of all the do's and the of bhakti is one thing. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. So what the mind does is really important. It's also important to be, favorable rather than unfavorable. Anukul yasya sankalpa, or anukul yena Krishna anushilanam, favorable. But the demigods were astonished. This unfavorable person achieved liberation. And then another astonishing thing is, you don't see the soul, but they saw the soul. And Krishna wanted them to see that here's the soul and here's Krishna, and they're two separate entities. See? You can't see the soul, right? There it is. And the soul waited until Krishna came out of the mouth of the demon. And then So what's that? What's that merging? That yet identity isn't lost. And then later, he achieved sarupya. He didn't lose his identity. Let's see. I was just reading something, and I couldn't find it, went back to locate it. In the Brihat Naradiya Purana, that's referenced in Hari Bhakti Vilas, who Prahlad was in his previous life. Prahlad asked Lord Nrsingadev in that Purana, how did I become such a dear devotee to you? And he gives a detailed description, which I'm going to read. In ancient times, in the place known as Avanti Nagar, lived a Brahmana, expert in the Vedas, whose name was Vasu Sharma. His wife, Suhila, had all the qualities of a sadhu, a peaceful nature and natural devotion to her husband. And due to possessing all these qualities, she had become famous in the three worlds. Vasu Sharma begat 5 sons in the womb of Suhila, 4 of whom were very good and well behaved. They were full of many desirable qualities and were very respectful to their father. However, the eldest son, who was in fact you in a previous life, was attracted to prostitutes, and as a result lost his character. In that life your name was Vasudeva. By the association of a prostitute, you lost all your good qualities. On the day of Nrsinga Chaturdasi, because of a quarrel with that prostitute, you both fasted and passed the night without sleeping, and in this way you unknowingly obtained the result of observing the Nrsinga Chaturdasi Vrata. The prostitute ascended to heaven and, in the form of an Apsara, enjoyed many pleasures, but in the end, she became my beloved devotee. In the same way, you also took birth as the son of Hiranyakashipu and became my beloved devotee. By observing the Nrsinga Chaturdasi Vrata, Brahma obtains the power of creation and Shiva obtains the power of destruction. By observance of this vow, everyone can obtain any kind of power and all their desires will be fulfilled. So it makes you want to know what that vrata is, right? So then it goes on in details and details and details and details. There's another reference that I read that I couldn't find again. It said something to the effect that it wasn't in relation to Prahlad. Someone achieved they did something, they got cursed, they achieved Sayuja, then they took birth again. And the commentary is saying that this demonstrates even when you achieve Sayuja, it's not that you lose your identity, you're still an entity. It's just suspended, and then again, when falling from that position or coming to the embodied position, individuality is restored. Something like that. So this Sayuja, at least in any case, these 3, Shishupal, Dantavakra, and Aghasura, it was seen that their souls entered into the body of Krishna, and they achieved Sarupya. So Sayuja doesn't mean they lost their identity. They became one with the Supreme. It doesn't give an explanation beyond making the statement, like, how did they go from Sayuja to Sarupya? There's no technology description. But that was the Lord's plan. He wanted to liberate Aghasura. An earlier commentary with the Putana story says that because, there's several becauses, but because she came in the mood of rendering some service, however demoniac her other intentions were, Krishna accepted that service. And because he accepted that service, he gave her that position. And because she had two brothers, he gave them liberation also. Although they're like Putana, they were sent by Kamsa for wicked means, wicked purposes. Just because of his relationship with Putana, he got Sayuja, he got Sarupya and Salokya Mukti. So what does that say, the practical application for us? And don't say we should become demons like Putana. The practical application is if you become, as you make spiritual progress, automatically it goes to your family members. You become dear to Krishna, they become dear to Krishna. What's special about Aghasura? Why did Krishna bring his Yogamaya, through his Yogamaya potency, bring him there? He had multiple things. He wanted to show the demigods, he wanted to satisfy the desires of the gopas. He wanted to do many things. He achieved many things. He wanted to experience being bewildered, not like our bewilderment. It's a really nice understanding that the position of sought after peace by spiritually minded persons should know that when you become a devotee of Krishna, when you enter into a personal relationship with Krishna, the peace is found in many ways, like bewilderment and anxiety and all kinds of things. Peace. Peace, may peace be with you. Or no anxiety, Vaikuntha. But there's anxiety. How could there be no anxiety if you're a parent? If you were a parent and had no anxiety, you'd be a terrible parent. If you're married and you have no attachment for your spouse, you'd be a terrible grihastha. So what's going on? I thought you're supposed to not be attached. What's this? What's going on? And what to speak of in the spiritual world? In the stage of perfection. There's attachment. When the cowherd boys were about to enter Aghasura, Krishna's concern was, they can't stand to be without me even for a moment. So how are they going to survive if they can't see me? And when he entered into the mouth of Aghasura and saw them, in the condition that they were in, it says as if dead, but they weren't dead. Their state of loss of external consciousness was due to two reasons: the heat of Aghasura's stomach and separation from Krishna. They lost external consciousness. And the cooling glance of Krishna revived them. Yay, let's go. What's for lunch? What's it like being a cowherd boy? What's it like being a resident of Vrindavan? There's all varieties of emotion, and it's very dynamic. It's not at all, it doesn't stay stuck. Very intense emotion of all varieties, and very genuine. Like not just the mind goes here and then the mind goes there. It's totally spiritual, you could say, from the heart to the max. And it's continuous. I just read this nice description of rasa. We use the word rasa, like to get a taste for something. You enjoy the rasa of, I don't know, something. Music or cooking or something. But there's the steady ecstasy or sthai bhava. That's the platform upon which the rasa is resting. But then it's the mixing of so many other bhavas, this bhava, that bhava, the other bhava. And as they mix, and there's just like waves churning in an ocean, as they mix, that's the bhakti rasa sindhu. And it's very amrita. Different bhava, like waves in an ocean, coming and going and rising and falling and mixing, and it's an ocean of rasa. It's suspended. The platform of it is the steady ecstasy, or your particular relationship with Krishna. But the taste of that relationship, that's rasa. And the bhavas keep moving. This, that, and combinations. Continuously, Krishna is drawing the love of his associates in Vrindavan, stimulating it, mixing it with different other flavors or other varieties. Not at all boring. Very, very dynamic. And many things at the same time. The demigods are being satisfied. They were anxious to see Aghasura killed. And when Krishna entered the mouth of Aghasura, oh no! And then Krishna came out, yay! And not only that, seeing liberation happening right before their eyes. Having a big festival. This is one thing after the next thing, after the next thing, after the next thing, after the next thing. Vrindavan. And Krishna concludes his Vrindavan, at least in terms of his manifest pastimes, he concludes them. We're entering to that section in the morning. He concludes, he wraps up his Vrindavan pastimes and leaves. It's too fun. How can he leave? Too much. experience of transcendental joy. So the answer is he doesn't leave. Those manifest pastimes that the world can see become unmanifest, and they're eternally going on. Otherwise it would be like really sad for the reader, what to speak of for the residents of Vrindavan. What to speak of Krishna, because he's enjoying these pastimes fully. Okay, let's see if there's some discussion. 7:20.
Guru Maharaj, is it true that each of these pastimes is performed and then consequently evokes a certain type of rasa?
Yeah.
So in this case it's wonderment.
And there's many.
Yeah.
There's wonderment and many others. Yeah.
Then later comes as in fear. So it's not like they're all necessarily chivalrous, although there's components of chivalry or virya, but there's the shades of it, as you were saying.
Yeah. It's really involved. I mean, when the acharyas start commenting on which of the bhavas are taking place in this situation and that situation, they go really microscopic, and it's really many things happening at the same time, and then that changes, and then those are withdrawn and other ones manifest, and sometimes their commentary gets into all of those mixes. Deep science.
May I ask
Yeah.
another question?
Yeah.
The Prahlad Maharaj reference that you read about his previous life and observance of Narasimha Chaturdashi. So when Lord Narasimhadev appears and has torn open Hiranyakashipu, if I remember right, the references say Lakshmi Devi and others were also astonished because they had never seen a form like that.
Yeah, it says that.
So when this is referring to Narasimha Chaturdashi previously, is it the same form of Lord Narasimhadev, or is it?
The commentary in the Bhagavatam says two things. She had seen that form. She had seen in previous kalpas, and she had seen in the spiritual world. She had seen that form, but she spoke like that to promote the Adbhuta Rasa. Specifically, it says she was feeling, and the others in her association were also feeling by her saying and feeling that. It was specific to invoke Adbhuta Rasa, astonishment.
I'm reading the question. This is online. First question is from Govinda Mohini Mataji. Goddess of fortune is Lord Vishnu's consort. How do we understand that Draupadi was goddess of fortune but married to Pandavas?
How do we understand that Subhadra was Yogamaya and married to Arjuna? How do we understand that Purnamasi in Krishna's Braja Leela was married and had as a son Sandipani Muni, who had as a grandson Madhu Mongol. How do we understand that? You can answer any one of those, you got the answer to the other ones. How do we understand that the personality of Godhead appears as the son of jivas? They undergo, Atri and Anasuya, or etc. Kashyapa and Aditi, and how do we understand these things? They're eternal associates. She not only was married to the Pandavas, she had 5 sons, fathered by the Pandavas. So there's detail that describes how this works with Vasudeva and Devaki, and details described how it works with Nanda and Yashoda. I don't know the details of how it's explained in relation to these others, but compliments of our acharyas, there's the it's complicated. There's the position of Vasudeva and Devaki in Krishna Loka, in the Mathura portion of Krishna Loka, and their expansion is present on earth. Anyway, rather than going through all of where the details are explained, I don't know the details of how it works, but somehow it works by the arrangements of Krishna's internal potency, such that the goddess of fortune is not compromised, or the Yogamaya potency, because these are Shakti tattvas. The goddess of fortune is not a jiva, and Yogamaya is not a jiva, but they have pastimes. So exactly how that works, there must be some transcendental explanation of how it works, but it just, in simple terms, it's pastime. The details of how the pastime energy works, I can't say without the kind disclosure by our acharyas how it works. Because it's the pastime potency, the Yogamaya potency, the internal potency of the personality of Godhead, making these arrangements for the Lord's pastimes. Krishna wanted Arjuna to marry Subhadra. Arjuna wanted to marry Subhadra. Subhadra wanted to marry Arjuna. Krishna wanted it. He made it happen. He gave his own chariot and horses for Arjuna to come and kidnap Subhadra. It's his arrangement. So how does it work? She's goddess of fortune. And as the goddess of fortune, she appeared as the daughter of Vasudeva and Devaki, that she's the younger sister. How does that work? Well, that may be, if Krishna and Balaram can appear, then why not the goddess of fortune? Why not the Yogamaya potency? Okay, somehow. And then she married a jiva. And they had a child. Yogamaya potency, the internal potency somehow, but without all the details of how that was worked out by the Lord's internal potency. It's his pastime for his pleasure. And everything moves according to his plan for his pleasure and his pleasure pastimes. If she is the goddess of fortune, how is it that her 5 children were killed? Hey, something's wrong with this. And Subhadra's grandson was killed mercilessly. How's that? Son, not grandson, son. Okay.
The next question is from Minu Mataji. She has a few questions and I'll read one by one. Does Krishna like to be with his friendly Vrajavasis who do not know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Or he likes his devotees who realize and worship him as the Supreme Personality? Or does he treat both equally?
What was the first option?
Does he like the Vrajavasis who are not aware that he is the personality of God?
He likes everyone, and he especially enjoys their company.
Then she asks, why does Krishna take different avatars in each yuga? Why can't he appear as in Krishna form in every yuga?
He's enjoying. We want to fault his variegatedness. It's not faulting. She's not saying fault. But he enjoys variegatedness. He within Krishna is everything, and there's some of this and some of that and some of the other, and according to appropriate circumstances. So it's not at all for his devotees boring or for him boring. It's all variegated and full of enjoyment, varieties of enjoyment. That's Krishna.
Then finally she asks, all demons who come to kill Krishna actually realize that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead?
No.
And regret for their attempt to kill Krishna before they get liberated?
No.
So again, next question is from Sanchari. She has 2 questions. We hear that the pastimes of Radharani were extremely confidential, so those outside of the Gaudiya Sampradaya don't have much knowledge on her position. In Krishna's Dwaraka Leela, she appears as Satyabhama, and in that part of Krishna's pastimes as well, we still don't have many known pastimes. Is there a reason why, even in Dwaraka, they are confidential?
No. I don't know that they're confidential in Dwarka. I don't know why she would say that.
Also, this is a clarification question on the following 2 points from Lord Brahma coming to and being astonished by Krishna. From my understanding on what you had read, Lord Brahma seeing Aghasura's spirit was a cause for him to come to Vrindavan. Does this mean Lord Brahma was checked out and seeing the celebration of Aghasura's death caused his curiosity to find out what was happening in Vrindavan to spike, so he came to see Krishna?
What we heard is not what was just read. What we heard was, he heard this festival, this and that, and he went to check out the festival. And when he went to check out the festival, he saw what he saw and he was astonished. That's what we heard. Okay?
Also, does this mean that Brahma sees all the fortunate souls as they exit the material universe?
You have to ask Brahma. That's it?
That's it.
Okay. Anything else in the room? Yeah.
I may have touched it to pause, but can you tap on it and say
Guru Maharaj, does Jaya and Vijaya also come every time when Krishna comes? Does Jaya and Vijaya, do they come every time when Krishna comes?
No.
How frequently they come? Like
Once. It's an exception, altogether an exception. That answer your question?
Yes.
Minu as a follower.
Okay, Meenu is on a roll here.
She says, how come the demons get liberated even when they don't realize Krishna is the supreme or regret for their attempt in killing the Lord? But we need to worship Krishna to get liberated.
Yeah, it's not fair. Go put a complaint in the complaint box. Krishna can, there's categories of perfection. And one of them is Kripa Siddha. And that's an option for Krishna. He can just bestow liberation to whoever he wants. No problem. And what inspires him with this one and not with everybody else? It's causeless. Mercy is causeless. Krishna's causeless mercy. Well, wait a minute. If he's causelessly merciful, he has the potency to do that. Why doesn't he just do that? Because he doesn't like to see living entities suffer. He wants them to come back to him, so he can just liberate them, just like that. So the answer that we're hearing is, each of these cases where liberation was given, it was preceded by deep meditation on the personality of God. Now, in a inimical manner, but they were purified by that deep meditation. And Krishna just took it the rest of the way. So what did they do on their side? Meditate upon Krishna. Negatively, but meditate upon Krishna is very powerful. If that's very powerful, then what about meditating upon Krishna favorably? That's more powerful than powerful. But he can grant liberation. No difficulty for him. Okay. Yeah.
Curiosity question.
So was hers.
So Aghasura achieved Sarupya liberation, and by definition of vimukti or liberation, we say that one is established in one's constitutional nature. So is it fair to understand that Aghasura's original position or nature was having a form similar to the Lord? That he went back to...
It would deductively reach that conclusion. But, the other kind of knowledge, descending knowledge, I don't know of any place in Scripture that says this happened because of that. And it's not uncertain.
Because some people get Sarupya, some got Salokya, something like that.
Yeah. Yes, that's correct. That's right. Well, what it says specifically with Aghasura, how are you going to have Sarupya without Salokya? He had both. Okay. Prabhupada ki jai. Bhagavatam ki jai.